Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Angela Brennan and today I'm bringing you Spellbinders 3D Emboss and Cut folder. I've got the mushrooms from me to you as well as the floral for you embossing folders which come with coordinating dies where you use the die and the embossing folder and you do that together. So you emboss and die cut the size at the same point. Easy enough to use because the dies slit into the images very easily. To do that, I do some ink blending. I use Distress Oxide inks and I ink blend 3 different sized panels to fit into the embossing folder. I use Strathmore Bristol Smooth card or Strathmore Mixed Media card to do my ink blending. I've done quite a bit of ink blending in my latest videos and I've received quite a few comments about it. The trick about doing ink blending is to use the right card, and I just mentioned the Strathmore cards that I use. And the other thing is to ensure is that your ink pads are juicy. Ensure you've got the refills, the right refills to ink pads, and refill them often enough if you use your ink pads often. So I do refill them quite a bit because I'm doing a lot of ink blending. I tend to go for the same colors. So I will next time show you how I refill my ink pads, because you ensure that you refill all of the surface, so wherever you press your foam pad on it, you will get the requisite amount of ink to transfer onto your ink panel. And finally, is using the right foam pad. That's the ink blending tool that I'm using here. I use the domed foam pad, and that does facilitate some seamless ink blending. Choosing the right colors helps as well. So if you're new to ink blending, try to use colors from the same color family that have slightly different hues. So for example, here I'm using blues and bluish greens, so they tend to blend well together. I will put a link to a video that I've done previously where you can get loads of examples of color combinations that go well together for distress inks as well as distress oxide inks. So do check out the video link in the description below. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. I'm just going to add the ink blended panels here, and you can see the dies fit really well onto the images that are on the embossing folder. So you put the die, then you put the ink panels on it, and then you ensure you use the right sandwich. I'm just spraying some water on the back of the ink panels just to soften the fiber slightly to prevent cracking when it goes through the embossing machine. So as you can see here, it's beautifully embossed for each of it, and the ink blending does lend to it quite well. So now what I'm going to do is just going to highlight some of that embossed elements with some metallic watercolor. I'm just coloring a little bit. Metallic watercolor, what I like about it, it's opaque, so it doesn't really bleed through, and you can put it on quite thick and it doesn't saturate the paper. So I'm not using watercolor paper here. That's okay because I'm not using too much water. So I'm applying the metallic watercolor quite thick onto the image just to give it a bit of a highlight. Not too much, just to enhance some of the embossed image there, and I think it looks pretty once it's done. You can either use metallic watercolors, or you can even use metallic markers, or you can even use an embossing, clear embossing ink and sprinkle some embossing powder. You can use lots of things. Here I'm using some pigment, white pigment ink, and just lightly putting it onto the embossed image so it just picks up the highlighted or the highest part of the embossed images. Just some different techniques to try. And the third one, I didn't do anything with it, just to leave it as is. I really love how these turned out. And the next set here, which is the Floral for You 3D Emboss and Cut folder, same principles. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some further inking onto the embossing folder after I do the first initial bit. I've done all the ink, all the panels that I want to do. I'm taking some pigment, black pigment ink, which is VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink pad. Then I'm placing the die, then the inked panel. So I'm putting the black ink onto the flat side. So you can see the flat side of the embossing folder. so the ink will go into the background of the inked panel. Use the right sandwich and you can see, yeah. So the background here is a bit light, but the good thing about this technique is it's easy enough to repeat it. So I put the embossed image onto the other side now. It just slots in quite easily, and I apply more ink to the flat side so that when I put it through the embossing machine again, the background of that image gets a little bit darker. And there you go. So I think it's really pretty. I do that for the other few images that are in the Floral for You embossing folder. There are many ways to keep the moisture in the back of the inked panel. Here, rather than spray some water, I'm taking a damp stamp chamois and just wiping the back of the ink panel just to make sure it's slightly damp, and when I put it through the embossing machine, it prevents the cracking of the paper and it embosses the image so beautifully. I'm going to go back now, put the die cut and embossed panel back into the embossing folder, apply some black ink the same way as I did previously, and I'm using the pigment blank ink, which is Versafine Clair Nocturne, and seeing how you can do that. So you can try embossing and die cutting without any inking of the background. If you think you want to further put a background, you can do it later on as well. So you got the option. You don't have to do it immediately. I just loved how all these inked panels came about. This is a great way to try different ink combinations or color combinations to do your embossing as well as die cutting at the same time. I think it's really fun to try different techniques as well as different color combinations when you're trying out this 3D emboss and cut folder. You can also try out this technique with patterned papers and do some inking. So there's quite a few options you could try. Here I've done it on black paper, and then I'm going to use some Distress Oxide ink. I used the Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink and I applied it onto the dark embossed image, just because I know the Distress Oxide ink will be lighter on it, and later on I do take the white pigment ink and I do swipe it across it as well. Once I've done that, I decided to add some metallic watercolor again to the centers of the flower. Initially, I was going to do some clear embossing pen. I was going to put some clear embossing ink with the clear embossing ink pen and sprinkle some embossing powder and melt it. But I thought this is probably easier and it's probably more accurate as well. So I think I like the idea of using opaque metallic watercolor to add some additional detail or accent to the embossed image. I think it just brings out the image a little bit better, and the metallic watercolor is perfect to do the job. All the products I've used are listed in the description below for your ease of reference. I do a lot of tutorial videos of Spellbinders club kits as well as their core collection releases that are released every month. I hope you find it inspirational, and I'd love to hear which techniques have inspired you, which ones you've tried. Do leave me a comment and let me know how it went, and if you've got any questions, I will endeavor to get back to you as soon as possible. If you want to tell me I'm on the right path with some of the techniques, or if there's some techniques that you think that I can try, I'd love to hear from you. Now that I've die cut and embossed all of these panels and decorated them as I see fit, I'm going to start assembling them into cards. The two smallest die cuts, which comes as a tag, which has got a hole at the top, I add a ribbon to it. But for all the embossed and die cut images, I do add a foam sheet at the back of it, and I think it just gives it a nice way for it to sit on the card front. I add this tag onto a 4-inch squared card. I think it's good to try different sized cards, and here I've decided to put the small panel onto a 4-inch square card and just add a die cut thanks onto it, because it's already got the sentiment from me to you on it, so it would say thanks from me to you. This die cut thanks is from a very old layered script sentiments from Yana's collection. For all of the embossed and die cut tags, panels, whatever you want to call them, I've kept it really simple. I've just used different colored cards, so the base cards of different colors, and just added it onto the card front without any further decoration, because I want the focus to be on the inked, embossed and die cut panels. There you go. So keep it simple, and Later on in the video, I do show you some wax seal that I do, and I do slightly different techniques with the wax seal. I'm still learning how to use the wax seal, so bear with me. I think every time I use the wax seal, I'm going to try something different and see how it goes. When I add adhesive or glue to these very thin die cuts, I just dot them and then I place it onto a non-stick sheet just to remove all the excessive liquid glue before I place it onto the card front. I just think it keeps it neater and the glue doesn't smear all over the card front. And I add a sub-sentiment and there you go, that's all you need for this card. So the focus remains on the embossed panel. Next I'm going to use the 3D wax seal stamp, the Peony Butterfly. So I've got two little tea lights here that I'm going to heat up, and I'm going to use two of the stands here with two non-stick wax seal spoons. And I'm going to start heating up different colored wax beads. Even the balanced wax beads, you can see I start off with the bits that I've had the balance from previous use, so nothing is wasted. And here's the 3D wax seal stamp, the Peony Butterfly, which goes really well with the mushrooms for me to you 3D emboss and cut folders. Here I'm also heating up the wax seal because I'm going to be putting different colors onto the wax seal. So I've got the green for the leaves, for the foliage, and I've got the yellow for the butterfly, and I'm going to add some red to the flower. So in order for the easy enough to remove the melted wax, it's good to have the wax seal stamp slightly warm. Not too warm, I'm still working out exactly how warm I need it, but have it slightly warm so it's easy for the excess wax to be removed. Using the non-stick wax seal spoons allows you to remove the excess or the balanced wax once it's dry to be reused later on. So there's no wastage, and that's why I like these non-stick wax seal spoons. And for the background of the oval, I'm putting some melted wax seal white for the background, and I'm going to add whatever wax that's already on the wax seal and just place it onto that and let it dry. You got to let it dry and leave it for a little while so that when you remove it, you don't damage the wax seal. It's not the neatest, but I think I'm getting there. I'm going to keep trying to get this type of wax seal right. You've got teal wax beads here. I think it's a mixture of a few different hues of teal, and I'm just placing that onto the wax seal. I remove the bubbles with some flame, so it just remove it immediately so it doesn't dry with bubbles on it. And I just am going to highlight it with some metallic gold marker. I also tried with white, so I put a white, I warmed up the wax seal stamp. I'm placing some melted white wax onto it, removing the excess, and I'm going to be putting it onto a black background. Now I do it immediately and the color, the white bleeds slightly, but I remove the circle around it and I'm going to put the fern wax beads that I've melted as the background. I'm just trying something different, and I use all three of these wax seal onto three different cards where I've done some embossing as well as die cutting. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And once you've subscribed, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. There are many ways you can assemble these cards, and I just try a few different ways by adding some metallic thread. I've got close-up pictures of all the cards I've created at the end of the video, per usual. Do leave me a comment if you've got a question or if you just want to tell me what you thought of the video. I really love hearing from all of you. Thank you so much for stopping by. Happy crafting, and I'll catch you at my next video. Do take care. cut and emboss this particular image from the Floral for You 3D cut and emboss folder on white card, and I decided to use various sized blending brushes to add some color onto it very lightly, nothing to press, because I'm just trying to get the highlighted embossed areas of the image just to add some color to it. I think it turned out quite well. I'd really like to see what you think about it. Really like to get a view on what you think about it. I've not really used this technique very much, but I'm exploring with it. I do think it turned out quite pretty, and I might use it for larger embossed images going forward. I do value your feedback, and I'd like to hear what you think on how this turned out. Look forward to hearing your feedback. Take care.